Oh, tea tastes extra good in the Ironman mug. Okay, we are back. Today is Friday 9th of July, which means it is 5 days post Ironman Bolton 2021. And I was going to film this the day after on Monday or on Tuesday, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a few days, and just purely because I couldn't be bothered and I was on a holiday as well. But we're here, and yes, I am fully kitted out in the Ironman merch. I've got the t-shirt on, the finish. I think this is the finisher t-shirt. Yes, it is. I think this is the third t-shirt I've got. I bought one on the Saturday when I was checking in the blue and red bags. I think my missus bought me one while I was racing, and then you get the free one. I think this is the one which I bought. One of them. It's one of them. And I've got the medal, the finisher medal. So yes, a little bit of a spoiler before you watch the video. I did finish. And as you'd probably just seen, I bought a mug as well, which is absolutely massive. So yeah, let's start off on the Friday. The Friday we drove down at around 2-3 o'clock from Newcastle. I live in Newcastle if you didn't know. And we got down to Lee, which is the little town right next to Pennington Flash where the swim is. We got down there for like 4 or 5 o'clock. We stayed in an Airbnb, me and Jimmy, the lad who I was also doing the Ironman with, and my missus as well. We stayed in an Airbnb at someone's house who they do a lot of triathlon training, and they actually offered to give us a lift down as well on the Sunday on the Ironman. So that was great. Got down there on the Friday evening, fueled up, chilled out. Saturday was the day pre-day before the Ironman, which again, it was both in mine and Jimmy's first time not only doing an Ironman, but first time doing any type of triathlon. And a lot of people, when we told people that they were quite astonished that we'd never done any triathlon before, and we were just going straight into the Ironman. But that's what we did. On the Saturday, it was dropping the bikes off, dropping the blue, dropping the red bag. If you didn't know, if you haven't done an Ironman before, so you've got a blue bag, a red bag for the transition area. So the blue bag was for T1, where you've got obviously all your bike stuff in ready for when you come out of the lake, the swim. Then you've got the red bag for T2 when you finish the bike, and then going into the run. So spent most of Saturday doing all the logistical side of things, getting everything set up. And to be honest, we thought it was going to be quite an easy, smooth day, which wouldn't take long. But we ended up, trying to find places to park, walking around, trying to drop the bags off, the stuff off. It was absolutely pouring down, which I'm going to get onto a little bit more when we get onto the actual race day. So the Saturday was pouring down as well. And yeah, we got all the bags dropped off. Eventually, we got it all done by about, 4 or 5 o'clock. Making sure that all that side of things was all done, so that on the Sunday, I'm actually going to take this off because this is heavy. So yeah, by the time, got to 4 or 5 o'clock, we got everything done, and we felt like, we just wanted to chill out. Because you've got to remember that the Ironman starts at 6 a.m. So you need to get up by absolute latest 4 a.m. And we actually chose for 3:30 as well, just so we could make sure that we could get some breakfast down us, have a coffee, flush everything out of the system to make sure we were fresh and ready for the Sunday. So on the Saturday evening, England were playing. I don't know if you can remember or you watch any of the football, the Euros at the minute. England were playing Ukraine, which kicked off at 8 p.m. So Ironman meal on the Saturday night was a big bowl of fajita chicken pasta, as we like to call it. So it's essentially just a big bowl of pasta, chicken, peppers, and in a creamy sauce. Obviously we carved right up with that. And then we watched the first half of the England game until, 9 o'clock. And then we decided we'd be sensible and would hit the hay, try and get some shut-eye, trying to get at least 4 to 5 hours. But as we'd heard from a lot of people don't sleep much at all. So to be honest, I was going to be thankful for anything, really. So we went to bed at around 10 o'clock or something like that. And I think I managed to sleep okay from what I remember. I think I got a good 4 to 5 hours sleep. So woke up at around 3:30. In the summertime in England, you don't really see much of the daylight. So waking up at 3:30 in the morning was a little bit unsettling. But got up on time. Luckily had a big bowl of granola and Frosties for breakfast to carb up. So I must have had 100 grams of granola and about 100 grams of Frosties. So I had a solid 150 to 200 grams of carbs at 4 a.m. and a coffee, and managed to flush the system out, which was exactly what we needed. And then once we were ready at about 4:30, had our tri-suit on, had the wetsuit on up to the hips as well, to make sure that, you know, we didn't get there and we didn't want to be hassling and making sure that we were trying to get the wet. We wanted to make sure we'd got the wetsuit at least half on by the time we got down there. And I think in the race briefing they did recommend that you'd had some of the wetsuit on as well. So when we got down there, it was quite a 5-minute drive from the Airbnb where we were staying, which was massively convenient. So that was great. Got down there, dropped the white bag off, which is the bag you get after once you've finished, and we need to make sure we dropped off our race nutrition for the bike. So we had our bags we put on the bike, which had about 1,000,001 flapjacks in for me, 2 water bottles with 2 scoops of tailwind in each one, so 50 grams of carbs in each bottle, and then, like I said, all my flapjacks within the bag. So bosh, that was all done and dusted. And then we just had about 45 minutes, because we got there at about 5, and we had about 45 minutes just to almost breathe it in and soak up the atmosphere and the energy, which was really good. The weather at that point was actually really nice. It was quite mild. I think it must have been maybe 15, 16 degrees. It was quite sunny, so we're thinking perfect weather. Again, later on in the day, that was not the case. But as we led up to the start, which was, I put myself on I think we put ourselves right at the back of the 120s, because obviously you have to predict your finish time for the swim. And if you've watched any of my videos, I'm not the strongest swimmer. I only learned really properly how to swim earlier this year. So me even putting myself in the 125, 120 was, that was me feeling quite optimistic as well, because I was probably thinking it was going to be more towards like 130 I was going to finish realistically. And from what I've heard, my swim coach said, because I breathe to my left side all the time, and the Ironman swim course loop, if you don't know, it's 2 laps anti-clockwise. So I was thinking, if I don't want to be in the mixer, of, the washer machine of people, I want to stay a little bit further to the outside, so that means I can always see people every time I breathe, so I can see how close I am to them, and that means I don't need to sight as much as well, which actually did pay dividends, and it did actually help quite a lot within the swim. So we ended up getting in the water. I think it was around 10 past, 6:15. The pros go first, and then everyone was almost shuffling forwards. And I think that once you got to the front, they let you in groups of, I think, like 3 or 4. Slid down the little pontoon, got in the water, and then away we went. So we're finally in, 8-9 minutes into the race. Swim was, as I said, one of my weakest disciplines, and one which I was worrying about the most going into this, because I didn't really have much of a swim background whatsoever, and I only really learned how to swim properly within the last month or two. We were getting a lot more open water swims in the last 4 weeks, so obviously I built up my confidence, but I still didn't really know how it was going to go on race day. So swim went pretty good, if I'm totally honest, if I do say so myself. So I stuck to the plan. I got in, made sure that I got myself on the right hand side of everyone, like I said, because I breathed to my left, so I could always see everyone. So if you don't know, if you do much open water swimming, or even swimming in the swimming pool for that matter, what I always say is it takes me about 10 minutes to settle in. The first 5 to 10 minutes of swimming is always horrendous. You're going from being on your feet, breathing normally, to vertically, to suddenly plonking yourself in water where you're horizontal, trying to breathe with your head underwater. I don't know what it is what it's like for other people, but for me it takes me a while just to settle into my breathing, and that's one thing I was worried about, just how long would it take for me to settle into my breathing, so I didn't almost mildly panic when I was in there. But if I'm totally honest, I settled pretty much like that. As soon as I got in the water, I don't know whether it was the adrenaline or the water wasn't cold. I think it said it was 20 degrees in there, but I seemed to settle straight away, which is great, obviously. So when we got in the water, we did 1 loop, so 1.2 miles. Felt really good. I don't actually have, on my Garmin watch, it's a 2:45, so I can't set the time to an open water swim, my workout, sorry. So I essentially just set it to a standard cardio workout, just so after 1 lap I could see what time I was on, so I could gauge to how well it was going. And I knew after 1 lap it was going to be somewhere between 40 to 45 minutes. And when I got out on my first lap, I came out on, my watch said 40 minutes. on the Australian style exit. So we got out, watched said 40 minutes. I was like, perfect, everything's going smoothly, feeling good, and I'm actually bang on time, if not even better. Got back in the water and yeah, did the same thing again. Didn't really feel tired at all. Managed to, a lot of people struggle to go for a wee in the water, but I'm not really one of those people. I can go while I'm swimming as well, so I must have gone for about 5 pisses, if I'm totally honest, during that swim. And I think that actually helps me relax, because for me to do it, I have to relax. So it's almost like a blessing in disguise that I can do that. So yeah, second lap, I think everything on the swim went pretty much bang on. It was probably a 9 out of 10 performance for me, relatively speaking, on the swim. The only thing was, is that I probably did swim a little bit too wide, because the swim is 2.4 miles, 3.8k, but I can almost guarantee that I did at least 4k, if not even 4.1, because of me swimming so wide, I was almost quite far away from the pack of people who were on the inside, so I was almost adding an extra little bit every time we sort of went round up towards the top buoy. So that was the only thing. I probably ended up doing more than I needed to, and I think I came out with an official time of, like, my watch said 1:24, but on the official Ironman it said I did 1:27, which I'm absolutely fine with. But I mean, if I didn't swim so wide, I probably would have finished more towards that 1:20. But whatever, 1:25, whatever it was, I'm absolutely happy with that. I was absolutely fine. So got out the swim, felt great. I didn't really feel out of breath, like I've exerted much energy whatsoever. Got to T1. Again, this is the first triathlon I've done, so I didn't really know what to expect. I wanted to make sure that I took my time. Went into T1, got my bag, got everything changed. You've got to take your wetsuit off, and for T1 it feels like there's so many things to remember within your bag, because obviously you take your wetsuit off, you've got your tri-suit on, you've got to make sure you've got your helmet, sun cream, cleats, your cycling shoes, your socks, and everything, and get everything back in your bag. And what I'd done is I'd handed my bag in, my T1 bag, so once you've changed, you hand it to the stewards, the people who are marshalling it, and then I ran to my bike, and then I noticed I hadn't put my cycling shorts on over the top of my tri-suit. So within training, every time I'd done a long cycle, I'd had my tri-suit on and I'd put my cycling short on top of that for extra padding. So I got to my bike and I was like, I had to almost make a split-second decision with, do I just let it go and save that extra fannying about of 2 minutes of running back, get my bag, putting it back on, or just go. But I thought, you know what, I've got potentially over 7 hours here of being on the bike. I do not want to regret this decision. So I ran back to the the T1 area, and then asked for my bag back, got my bag back, put my cycling shorts on over the top of my tri-suit, gave my bike back, and then went back to my bike. So that probably added an extra 2 to 3 minutes, but in the grand scheme of things, what does that matter? So bike, swim done, on at the bike, and if I'm totally honest, the first hour and a half to about even 2 hours of the bike. So you start off at Pennington Flash, just outside of Lee, then you cycle all the way up into Bolton, and then when you get to Bolton, I think, looking at the map, you did about 5 to 10 miles up part of the loop route, and then you'd turn around at the top, come back on yourself, and then you'd do 3 big, I think it was 31-mile loops. So the first hour and a half is spent just getting to Bolton from Pennington Flash, and then adding on that extra 10 mile just to make up the 112. So that first hour and a half is absolutely fine. You're almost just settling in to the cycle. So that was fine. And then, got on to the actual loops, and then did that full loop, 30 miles. So what's that? We're on about 50 mile in by this point. This is maybe about 2.5 hours in. So we're about a third of the way, quarter to a third of the way. And that's when it changed. That was when, it was literally just as I'd finished the first loop when I was coming back into Bolton. So anyone who did the Ironman last Sunday would know you're going to know what I'm going to say, what changed with the weather. So I got back into Bolton. That was when the torrential rain started. And I've ridden in rain over the last year, but this was something else. And I'm not just saying this, I'm not exaggerating. Well, maybe I am a little bit, but it was horrific. Like, the rain was it was lethal. It wasn't just that wet, trickling down rain. It was the absolute torpedo rain. It was the rain which, if you didn't have your helmet on, it's going to hurt. So that started after the first lap. Like I said, what's that, about 50 mile in or whatever it was. And it was one of those where it was a mild day, 18, 19 degrees, but because it rained so heavily for a good 2 hours, because it pretty much was that heavy for the full way around of my second lap. And that lap was, I'm not going to lie, that was probably one of the hardest hardest bit of cycling I've had to endure through any of my training. Purely just because the rain was so heavy, and I just had my tri-suit and my cycle shorts, and because I got wet, obviously I just got really cold, and because I got cold, obviously I started shivering, and this is how bad it was. I actually couldn't wait for the steep climbs to come, because when the steep climbs were coming, my heart rate would rise and it would almost keep me somewhat warm. But then as soon as we're going downhill and on the flat, when the breeze is created and when you're wet, it was just absolutely killing me. And I've shivered on the bike. I've been cold on the bike over the winter, but I've never been that cold. And I'm not using it as an excuse, but it definitely played an effect on my energy levels and just how I felt overall, because for one, I couldn't feel my hands and I couldn't feel my feet. So I had obviously my cycle shoes on. I didn't have any overshoes on to keep my feet warm, and I had some just standard Nike socks on, not even proper cycling socks. So they were absolutely soaking. Couldn't feel my feet, couldn't feel my hands throughout that second lap. To be honest, even the remaining of the cycle. But that second lap in particular, when the rain was at its heaviest, was brutal, if I'm totally honest. There was points where I was thinking, at least 3 times I was thinking, I don't know how I'm going to complete this, because I remember looking down on my cycle computer and it said 50, 60 miles, and I was like, I'm only halfway and I'm shivering like a shitting dog. I'm absolutely freezing and I'm cramping up because it was so cold and the rain was that heavy. I had to concentrate so much on the road and the descents and just try not to almost shiver to death that I was not forgetting about my nutrition, but I was definitely not drinking and not eating as much. So I remember when I got onto my third loop, so I was on the last 30 miles, the rain, it was still raining, but it wasn't as torrential as it was before. I was so cold and shivering that I remember stopping at one of the aid stations and I was thinking, what can I do to warm up? And the only thing I could think of was take my socks off, because my feet were so wet, they were like puddles in my cycling shoes. So I stopped at the aid station, took obviously my cycling shoes off. Well, I'm saying I didn't even do it. There was an ambulance there, and one of the nurses who was just handing out the food and the drinks, I got her to do it because I couldn't feel my hands. So she took my cycling shoes off, took my socks off, helped me get my shoes back on, and then I remember her saying, could you help me put my drinks bottles back in my cages, because I couldn't physically grip onto it. And then she was saying, right, I want you to grip your brakes and then prove that you can brake, because obviously she was starting to be a little bit concerned that I couldn't feel my feet and hands. And my right hand was working, but my left hand was definitely compromised. And when I was trying to prove that I could somewhat feel my hands, I was pulling the brakes and my right one was pulling, but my left one, I'd almost just lost any type of feeling in my fingers, because obviously they were that wet and cold. And she was just like, are you sure you can carry on? And I was like, obviously I really want to carry on, but if I'm totally honest, I had one side of my brain saying there's no way you can quit, but then the other side of my brain was just like, you are absolutely freezing, you've still got 30 to 40 miles left, you're not going to be able to do it. Anyway, long story short, I ended up getting back on the bike, carrying on. Again, it helped a little bit taking the socks off, so I didn't have puddles for feet, and I ended up finishing the bike. But the last half of that bike, that last 60 miles, just took it out of me so much. My energy levels, I think, were so compromised from shivering so much. My body temperature, just trying to keep to a certain level, took so much out of me. I still managed to bang in a load of fuel, because I noticed, like I said, I did start to cramp my quads and my hamstrings as well. So that's when I noticed I'm in deep shit here. I was shivering and I was cramping, which is not good. So the last half a lap, the last 20 miles, I made sure I banged in a load of food, and I just tried to keep warm as best as possible by almost ditching the game plan of holding back. I ended up trying to push harder purely just to keep warm, as I said. So anyway, ended up finishing the bike at around, I think it was like 7 hours, 7.5 hours, 7:35 or something. I can't even remember what it was, but if it wasn't for the rain, it sounds like an excuse. I would have liked to have thought that I'd finish it in around 7 hours, maybe just over 7:5, 7:10, or somewhere in that 7 hour mark. But because of everything that went on, it ended up adding at least like half an hour on. And then by that time, we'd got to the run. I was just so happy to be off the bike, if I'm totally honest. Got into T2, and honestly, I must have done about 4. So when you take your bike into T2, obviously you rack your bike, and obviously I knew where my number was, but I remember looking with my bike. I was 634, that was my number. And I remember, seeing the number range where you put your bike, and I just couldn't find it. I couldn't find the 634 number. So I must have done like 4 or 5 laps of the thing, looking to where to put my bike, which added about an extra 2-3 minutes on, and it was making me get quite almost frustrated. But anyway, eventually found that, put my bike on, got changed, a little bit of a faster transition than T1, obviously because you don't have to take your wetsuit off or anything like that. But by this point, I was knackered, obviously fatigued. I'd finally started to warm up a little bit because I'd come off the bike and it wasn't raining by this point. But I was just I think, a lot more fatigued than I've liked to have been, purely because of what happened on the bike. Got into the run, first 10k, so first 6 mile was perfect. Again, I think I was just so happy to be off the bike that I was just, feeling okay, and that was almost masking the pain. So I think I was doing about an 8:20 minute per mile for the first 10k 6 mile. Felt great, that's what I wanted to hold. And then I just hit an absolute massive wall. It hit about the 7th mile. Just after it was around when I was coming onto my second loop, and it's 4 loops of the Bolton course of the park in the Bolton Town Centre, if you didn't know. So the start of the second loop hit a massive wall, and again, it was, when you get those thoughts going through your head, thinking, you look down at your watch, you've done 7 miles, it feels like you've done about 70, and you've got nearly 20 miles still to go, and I'm just thinking, I'm in deep shit here. I don't know how I'm going to be able to finish this. But anyway, started to be a bit more tactical, walked every single aid station, and even there was a long strip of road up Chorley New Road, which had no aid stations, and it was probably like a mile and a half up there, mile and a half back. Then there was another aid station. Going to the park, there was another aid station. Running to Bolton Town Centre, another aid station, and then you do the loop again. But that long strip up the road where you go up, turn around, come back, it felt like it just went on forever. And I had to be really tactical on my second and third loop just to not die. Well, that's slight exaggeration. I wasn't that bad, but I was really in quite a dark place. It was one of those where you hear people where, you hit a wall and you've got to really dig deep. And in training, because I've been quite tactical how I went about things, I always fueled well, I never really hit a really bad wall. I felt really tired where I wanted to stop in training, but never to the point like I did on the day. And it's just one of those where it's like every part of your body and your mind has just said, just stop. I was almost thinking of ways to justify stopping, and what I could say to my family, my friends, and my clients who were tracking me on the app, of what I could say to justify stopping. I had a load of little things, like minor injuries popping up, which I could say, but I think just the thought of making sure that you get to the next almost aid station, and then see how you feel, and then go from there. But having those aid stations and making sure I could just stop, even if I was running really slow anyway, but just having those aid stations where I could have some water, have some crisps, which really helped. Having something salty after having, sweet stuff all day, and almost feeling sick because of it all, really did help. So got through the second loop, and obviously that's where my girlfriend was, and my dad actually came as well, and just having that really does help. That was absolutely massive. My girlfriend and my mates, missus as well, were absolutely great. I probably couldn't have got through without them, to be honest, because I was really having to dig deeper than I ever had in training. But long story short, managed to get through the run in, I think it was like 4.5 hours on the run. I wanted to do sub 4 before it, and it's one of those at the minute where, obviously I did have a slower bike and a slower run than I previously wanted to, but with it being my first Ironman and first ever triathlon, I'm just happy to finish, because I had to really dig deep on, throughout that bike and run, if I'm totally honest. I didn't enjoy large parts of it purely just because of how much I was suffering. But overall, got it done. I think I finished in something like 14 hours. Again, I wanted to finish in about 13 or sub 13, but it doesn't matter. I got it done. And that is pretty much everything. I'm trying to remember all the little details. Like I said, it's been 5 days now, which is absolutely flown over. But I think all I can say is I love the train. I love the day. The support on the day around the bike loop and the run loop, and obviously from my girlfriend as well, was absolutely amazing. Like, that helps so much, especially when you're really struggling and trying to get through. But if everyone says once you're finished, you hate it, and you always go through points of saying, why am I even doing this, on the day when you're struggling? But then a few days later, people say you always want to sign up to the next one. And to be honest, would I do another Ironman? I won't do another full Ironman for probably a good amount of time yet. I do want to do a half Ironman though within the next year or two. I'd love to do a 70.3, but for a full Ironman, I'm probably going to leave that for quite a while, if I'm totally honest. It just takes so much out of your time for training, and obviously on the day it's a massive feat. Unless you're a pro, you're probably going to be doing it in over 10 or 11 hours, which is obviously a long day. But anyway, enough of me rambling. Overall, loved it. It was absolutely an amazing experience, apart from me, having to really dig deep on that bike and run. But like I said, I got it done. And I think, there's going to be a lot of things I've missed off here, well, I'm probably going to remember once I've finished the recording. But if you've got any questions, put them in the comments below. And I hope you enjoy the Ironman Bolton 2021 race recap.